Does your company deliver its brand strategy? We have what you need right here on the Leadership Voice. Welcome to the Leadership Voice. I'm your host, Jay Barbuto. Today's show is about identifying and marketing the brand of your organization. Joining us are Dan Nasitka, Chief Rocketeer and VP of Marketing at Rocket Launch, and Robert Santana, CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Central Orange Coast. We also have a great leadership lesson being delivered by Professor Chiranjeev Kohli. We have a lot of great things coming, so let's get things started with our quote of the day. Today's quote comes from Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Our first guest today is Dan Nasitka. Dan is the co-founder of Rocket Launch, a marketing and PR agency where he blends storytelling with strategic marketing to help brands make an impact. A former musician turned PR pro, he's partnered with brands like Boys and Girls Club, Dodgers Foundation, and the Orange County Fair. Please welcome to the show, Dan Nasitka.
Thanks for having me. Happy
Dan,
to be here.
Glad you could be here to share your insights around strategic branding. Maybe we could start by talking about your story. How did your career evolve towards PR and marketing?
Yeah, I have an interesting path. I was former life musician, performance, education. I traveled domestically and internationally to play music, and at some point that path wasn't for me and I decided to forge a different path, and so that kind of led me initially into the world of marketing, communications, and brand. And so, for me, it was something that I didn't know much about when I first got into it, but as I learned and grew and surrounded myself with mentors and people who, had been doing this for years and years and years, it became something to me that really ignited a passion inside of me. And, now fast forward many, many years later, starting Rocket Launch and being able to work with so many amazing brands and organizations, for-profit, non-profit, across the spectrum. It's just been a really exciting journey. And I think, for me, it's something that continues to really keep me on my toes, and brand, the evolution of brands and marketing and PR and comms, it's always changing. I mean, every month it seems like something is new, and so that's what's exciting for me.
With your early in your career, it was all about performance.
Yep.
And were you a songwriter as well?
Not songwriter, instrumentalist.
More,
yep.
But in the musical industry, it's all about every song is telling a story, right?
Yep. And I think that's, performance, creativity, those are two important things when it comes to a brand, and communication of that. So storytelling, either whether it's through music or whether it's through an organization, and honing in on values and the why behind an organization, and you can do that through storytelling and purpose-driven marketing.
Yeah, and creating the connection with the audience. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
That parallels as well.
Absolutely, yeah. The connection with, understanding your why as an organization is important, and you can do the 5 whys if you just keep asking yourself as you get lower and lower in your layer, right, of the why we exist, why do we do what we do, but ultimately, purpose-driven brands, customer-centric, so whether you're offering a product or a service, driving all of what you do towards making that customer happy.
So a lot of people kind of know about branding, but share with everyone, what does it mean when we talk about organizational branding? What are we talking about?
So an organizational brand, even a personal brand to a degree, but a brand is a combination of so many things. It's your values, it's the why you exist, it's the visual presentation of what your company looks like, it's the tonality of it, it's how the built-up trust that you've created with your audiences. And so all of those things, when they come together, and they create something that's very special, which is trusted brands, and brands that have great reputation in their space. Brands move at the speed of trust, and so and really people move at the speed of trust, and so brands need to be able to land on that and create an environment, create a product, a service that is going to allow a customer to, be wrapped up in that trust hug, so to speak.
And so the better we execute our brand strategy, the more we're going to engender trust.
Absolutely. Brand strategy is all the things I just mentioned, visual, tonality, a good product or good service, all of that. And so when you have all that together, you're kind of creating this ecosystem of a great brand.
So a well-managed brand creates synergy.
Absolutely.
Where each piece makes the other pieces that much stronger, that much more reliable, that much more trustworthy.
Absolutely. And there's so many ways, once you start diving into the weeds of different marketing strategies and PR, there's different strategies to help elevate the brand, but ultimately, the trust that you build with your audience is the most important, and you do that through different ways.
Why is building a brand and managing that brand and having a brand strategy, why is it so essential for a company to focus?
I mean, it's everything. Without a purpose, without a why, you could have the best product in the world, but if everything else around it isn't built up to that same level of excellence, it's going to fall apart. If you, or look at it the other way, you could have the best marketing in the world. You could spend the most amount of ad dollars, but if the product or the service doesn't hold up to that value, you're going to fail real quickly. And so the why behind all of it is your reason, is your purpose. It's, whether it's a nonprofit that focuses on youth development, and your why is the kids in the community, and you're building a better, society. That's one thing. If it's a, tech-driven product maybe, and you're trying to change someone's life for the better through this product, that's could be your why. But you have to have all the things that go around it too, to make it the best.
The managing a brand strategy has so many layers and so many nuances. It's like there's so much potential. I would imagine very few companies reach its full potential for really executing its brand strategy.
I think brands always aspire to reach their potential. I think there are some companies and brands who have done that really well. Patagonia is a great example of a brand that's been built on trust and reputation and amazing products, and really like standing on their values no matter what. And so that's a really interesting case study of an organization who has created great brand, or a great brand. There's others that sometimes fall short of that, but I think every organization always has the intention, I would hope, to push towards being a great brand.
So when should an organization seek out a brand strategist?
Yeah, I don't know if there's exactly one point of time. I think first it depends on where you are, right? If you're a startup and you're trying to create that service or that product, you really need to create what you're wanting to sell first, so that you have an understanding of what you're doing and what your why is. And then that for startups in that case, you can bring in maybe a brand consultant to start looking at, okay, well, this is your product or service. Now let's talk about your values. Now, how is that translating to your website? How is that coming across to internal audiences or external audiences? So I think from a startup perspective, that's that's one point. But from a well-established company, I think it's always good for brand consultants to be brought in, every year, couple years, to really analyze, like, how are we doing as an organization? How are we doing as a brand? We have so many tactics that we can use to kind of determine the level of strength of a brand, and so going through those efforts to see, are we really like hitting our touch points? Are we really showing the value that we bring, or hopefully are bringing to our customers? So, and there's some companies, big companies, that have brand consultants on year round. They're on retainer, and they just, continually evolve the brand.
And so a brand consultant will come in and they'll ask lots of questions.
Yeah, it all starts with questions. It's a lot of listening. It's a lot of talking to leadership and talking to customers and understanding where are the shared values. Do they still align?
There's a process to this. And the process involves assessing. It involves lots of interactions with key folks in the organization.
Yes. And so I think what is important with you're learning on it from a C-suite level type perspective, and making sure that they're all on the same page. And then you're also hearing it from like the customer side, and making sure that what the brand is sharing externally is also coming across from a customer perspective. And then internally too, the culture of the organization. Is the culture of the organization sharing these same values, understanding what the brand value and proposition is?
So if it's done well, it can have a really big impact on the organization. What are the best practices for brand strategies?
Well, I think first and foremost, a brand needs to really align on their values. So kind of harping back to the why, what's your why? What are the values? What are you trying to either evolve or change? And it's not, brands, it's interesting. I think the biggest mistakes that brands make are they are trying to be better, and they're trying to make themselves the hero of their own story. They're not the hero of their story. Their customer is the hero of their story, or the service they're providing. But when a brand tries to market themselves as their own hero, it fails. And so to go through that process and to understand that you're creating a company, you're creating a business, a service, it has to be for whoever that end user is, or the community that you're within. And you do storytelling and purpose-driven marketing through those efforts, and to highlight that side of it.
So a really well-executed brand is going to resonate with others, and it's not there to placate a CEO or to make us feel good about ourselves.
Correct. Yeah, those are the brands that you see maybe pop up, and then you don't see them again after a short time, because there's just no longevity, there's no legacy building, there's no, there's nothing, it's shallow, right?
I'm sure that there's a lot of executives out there that say, yeah, we should probably do some work in this, we should probably improve our branding, eventually. But what are the risks of not actively managing your brand?
Well, I would say the biggest one is just lack of trust in your publics, right? So whoever your audiences are. Irrelevance in your market. It could be, just poor reputation. All of those, I don't think any organization would want to have any one of those three at the same time, at the least. And so I think when brands don't pay attention to that part of it is when they start to go off track, or they'll hear negative responses, or they will hear feedback from their audience. And if they don't change, if they don't pivot, if they don't evolve, they might be sliding in a direction they don't want to go in.
Is it easier to manage the brand early on and make it strong? Is that easier than trying to fix it later?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you want to, don't build the plane while you're flying it. If you can build the whole plane first, that would be the best approach. But also just over time, brands, you have brands and organizations that are 100 years old. They they didn't just create it 100 years ago and then not touch it for the next 10 decades. So branding is an evolution too, because it has to keep up with the times of change, and it has to keep up with their audience. As their audience grows and gets older and new generations come in, well, how are they shifting their, not only what their brand says, but how are they shifting their different strategies, marketing strategies, communication strategies to message out to that new demographic of, now I'm a millennial, so it was millennial, but now we got the Gen Zs and then the kids beyond that too. So every decade, every generation that comes through, there's a different strategy that forms or should form with brands.
So if an executive is watching this show right now, they should know that waiting is never good for your brand.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely needs to be something that the organization is willing to undertake. And I think that's where a lot of C-suite individuals maybe get stuck, is they don't feel like there's a need to do it, or they do it 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Right. But a brand is your essence. It's who you are as an organization to who you're trying to serve. And so you can't, it's not a 1 foot out, 1 foot in type situation. You're either all in or you're not.
So if an organization wants to develop strong, trusting relationships with the community, with its customers, and not become obsolete or become an organization that is under question, they should really manage their brand.
Absolutely, and some of the big companies have brand reputation roles in their company. A lot of public relations work is brand reputation, and so that ultimately is messaging out about your brand to a specific audience to either raise awareness, to increase reputation, and there's all these different there's a communication theory called the PESO model, which is paid media, earned media, shared media, and owned media. And if you think of 4 big circles, and there's all these strategies and tactics within each one of those circles, but what happens when all 4 come together? They intersect in the middle. And that's really where the brand comes into play. And do you have trustworthiness? Do you have a strong reputation? Do you have you evolved with the times? And all, you don't necessarily need to do everything in each circle, but all 4 of those circles in some degree have to come together to create a strong brand.
Oh, that's great. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on today's show. You're going to stick around for our leadership panel?
Oh yeah, it's going to be a good one.
All right. It's now time for a featured segment of the Leadership Voice. It's today's Did You Know? Today's Did You Know comes from fitsmallbusiness.com. Branding consistency can increase revenue by over 20%. And although over 85% of companies have brand guidelines, only 30% enforce them. It's now time for today's Leadership Countdown. Today's countdown comes from Forbes magazine. We bring you the 5 biggest branding mistakes companies need to avoid. Number 5, employees being poor brand ambassadors. Number 4, neglecting social media. Number 3, poor customer service. Number 2, lack of focus. And the number 1 branding error that companies need to avoid is inconsistency across channels. Don't go anywhere. We have Robert Santana in the studio right after a word from the Giles O'Malley Center for Leadership. The Bringing Learning to Work program is our way of connecting the faculty of Cal State Fullerton with the business community of Orange County and Southern California. We have over 72 training programs that are available via distance or face-to-face. And the faculty come to your company and they deliver the training to your employees.
The Bringing Learning to Work program is really fundamentally, it's leadership programming. We do diversity and emotional intelligence training. We partner with Cal State Fullerton because they had subject matter experts in these fields. And we're really fortunate and privileged to be able to do that.
Many companies can't afford training and development personnel. And so this is a great opportunity to leverage Cal State's faculty to help them develop their learning programs.
The leadership of the center and the students allow me to not only bring leadership development to my company, but allow me to interact with some amazing students who have grit, potential, and just amazing futures in front of them, and I get to take part of that. It's a wonderful feeling.
When your organization is ready to develop its talent, reach out to the Center for Leadership, and we'll help get you there. Welcome back to the Leadership Voice. Our next guest is Robert Santana. Robert Santana is a social entrepreneur and serves as CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Central Orange Coast. Robert's passion for mentorship and challenging the status quo has transformed Boys and Girls Club of Central Orange Coast into one of the most respected and innovative brands in Orange County. Please welcome Robert Santana.
Jay, thank you for having me. Very excited to be with you today.
Now, Robert, as a CEO, having to manage brands, we're really excited to have you on the show to kind of share a little bit about your journey and your story, but also things that have helped you as you've developed and managed the brand strategy for Boys and Girls Club. Let's start with you and how you came to eventually be the CEO at Boys and Girls Club Central Orange Coast.
I think like a lot of people that go into the nonprofit sector, it wasn't by design. I had just left a career serving in the United States Air Force and was actually completing a child development degree at Cal State Fullerton. And it was through one of those courses that required field service hours during the summer months that I went to the Boys and Girls Club in Santana to volunteer, meet some kids, thinking I would be there for 2 to 3 weeks. Here this month, I celebrate 20 years of service at the Boys and Girls Club.
Wow. And so when you started out, did you think you were going to make a career out of that?
The complete opposite. I thought I was going to spend a couple weeks mentoring some kids, learning about the nonprofit sector. And at that point, I thought I was going to be a teacher. And this organization transformed my life. It allowed me to leverage my skill set as an entrepreneur, my background in education and law enforcement, and my passion for serving young people and unlocking the greatness that every young person has.
So let's talk about the brand at Boys and Girls Club Central Orange Coast. What is the brand?
I've never met anyone that has told me that they've never heard of the Boys and Girls Club. So, Boys and Girls Clubs of America have been around for over 100 years. We're a legacy organization, and here in Orange County, we've served the community for over 82 years. And so, as a brand, we're that organization that no matter what's happening in the world, you can always count on the Boys and Girls Club to do the right thing for kids. We've evolved several times over in the course of 8 decades to become that premier nonprofit in Orange County that supports other services, other nonprofits, collaborates with other organizations so that we can strengthen community one family at our time. Our core mission is to ensure that every young person has a mentor and a champion in their life.
And earlier when Dan was on, he was talking about how having a strong brand strategy and managing it well engenders trust. How important is trust in your business?
It's everything. I mean, we literally, our entire service model is based on parents trusting the Boys and Girls Club with their kids. I mean, there's just no other scenario that's more important than what a parent needs to think about when they're trusting someone with their kids. So every single day, we have to earn that trust in the community with parents. We're also a partner to several school systems, and they have an obligation to educate kids. So when they bring us in as a partner, it also requires trust that we are a partner that will care for the kids as much as they care for the kids.
So what role does the CEO play in managing the brand strategy?
I mean, the chief executive of any organization is responsible for every aspect of the organization, whether it's the financials, whether it's the management, the compliance. The role of the executive as it relates to brand is as connected to, are we delivering on our mission as an organization in whatever sector you're in. And so really it's the fulfillment of the promise that you make as a company to serve the community. And so as it relates to us being strategic and thoughtful about our brand, it requires us to be very much connected to the community, understand the needs of the families we serve and the different stakeholders, who we have the privilege of collaborating with.
As the CEO, you've been CEO now for how long?
This is my 18th year as the CEO and my 20th year at the Boys and Girls Club.
So as you think about the role of brand strategy and the role that you've played through the years, has it evolved?
It evolves daily. I mean, you think about what's happening in every sector right now with just the velocity of change that we see. But every organization is going to evolve in order to stay relevant. I think about the origins of our Boys and Girls Club 82 years ago, where, at that point we were a boys club. The goal was to keep boys off the street. And so not only has our brand changed, but our purpose has evolved. The complexity of the mission has evolved, tremendously over the year. Where, we're not just doing the same traditional things that we had done 82 years ago. There's a lot more that we're doing as it relates to the brand. We're a legacy organization, and so I think people have trust and respect for our brand. But it's also important that we, share with folks all the things that we do. So one of our biggest vulnerabilities is we do so much as a nonprofit that it's very difficult to squeeze that into an elevator pitch, right? We do things for kids, we do things for adults, we serve the whole family, we serve meals, we connect kids to technology, and the list goes on and on and on. And so it's on us to make sure that in our storytelling, we're really keeping people updated on what the Boys and Girls Club looks like today.
Now, when you joined 20 years ago and became CEO 18 years ago, did you have a really strong brand mindset at the time? Or is it something that evolved for you and became a stronger priority during your tenure?
I think what's worked well for us is that I've never looked at it as a separate strategy. It's not like I look at the core values and the mission of our organization and then I ask myself, how do I make it look good? I think the reason our brand is as respected today is because we run our organization very much values driven. We stay very much focused on the impact, the mission of our organization. And then when it comes to the strategy of brand, it's just about how do we get that out to people? How do we show them who we really are? How do we show people our purpose, our why? But I think the reason it's worked so well for us is because it's organic. We're simply showing people externally what we're doing internally.
And before this, you had a career in the Air Force.
Yes.
What are some of the things you learned in the Air Force that you were able to bring into your role as CEO at Boys and Girls Club?
In hindsight, a lot of who I've become was really a result of the lessons that I learned while serving in the Air Force. I believe that the United States military of all branches is the best leadership university on the planet. And the way that they break you down in those early months through your training and then rebuild you up. Some of the best leaders I've ever known were people that I served with in the Air Force. The lessons that I took from that experience and how they directly apply here and every day since I've started at the Boys and Girls Club are things like standards of excellence, right? So one thing that the United States military is known for is setting the bar very high, the expectations very, very high, making the impossible possible. And so having that energy in my leadership style of constantly raising the standard of excellence and making sure that as a culture that I'm surrounded by people that align to that standard of excellence. The other is service. If I think about my entire adult life, it has been dedicated to the service of others, whether it was through the military or through the Boys and Girls Club. And that I think is something that, in our organization is a part of our culture, is how do we serve others, and specifically, how do we mentor, each other in the communities that we serve. I believe that the most important ingredient that any successful person has ever had is having access to mentors. And so that's why our mission is so important, is to make sure that every young person has a mentor in their life, because that is a superpower. It doesn't matter what school you go to or what neighborhood you were born into or how much money your parents make. If you have a mentor in your life, you're unstoppable. And our focus is to unlock that greatness.
Well, if you were talking to other CEOs, and you will be because they do watch the show, what advice would you give a CEO with respect to brand strategies?
Going back to what I said, it shouldn't be separate of what your business strategy is, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you run an organization that cuts corners and doesn't take care of people and doesn't respect each other, how do you expect to have a brand that is seen any differently? So really understanding how these two tie together is, the role of leaders is to take care of people. And the role of a CEO is to ensure that your culture reflects that you're taking care of your people, whatever your product, whether it's a service or nonprofit or for-profit, but be intentional with who you are and what you stand for and what you want people to know you for. As you think about a brand is how someone would describe you or how they feel about you as an organization. And so if you want to have a strong reputation and a strong brand, then you have to be a strong organization that does the things that you say you do. Because
saying one thing and doing another is the first way to just lose your brand.
I think that's entirely true. And again, think of it less as an afterthought and a marketing exercise of how do I make myself look better, and instead really focusing on the organization, the culture of who you are, why you exist, and then showcasing that, through various tactics and strategies.
Well, great. Robert, I want to thank you for being on the show. We're going to stick around because we're going to have a leadership panel with you and Dan together.
Can't wait. Thank you.
It's now time for our leadership example. Today's leadership example comes from Newsweek.com. We bring you America's most loved brands for 2025. Don't go anywhere. Our leadership lesson is coming up next. Welcome back. It's now time for our leadership lesson. Today's lesson will be delivered by Chiranjeev Kohli.
I'm Chiranjeev Kohli, Professor of Marketing, and here is today's leadership lesson. Your branding is closely intertwined with your profitability. How so? Let me explain. The first thing you want to understand is that you want to have control over your pricing. If you have to pay 10 times when you increase your price, you're in trouble. But what makes it possible for your customers to be willing to pay more for your brand? Well, if your product is just like everyone else's, there is no reason why they would pay a premium. You are selling a commodity, and for a commodity, the market sets a price. You don't. You have lost all leverage. So if you want to command a price premium, you need to differentiate your product. And that's the first criterion for creating a brand. It's the only reason someone will be willing to pay a premium, but to be successful, you need to pay attention to two more things. First, the differentiation should be meaningful in the minds of your customers. It should make sense to them. It should appeal to them. While many brand managers may understand what the brand is all about, it may not coincide with what the customers think of it and or care about. Which takes me to my last point. The customer should be aware of this differentiation, which of course requires substantial investment to create a consistent image. But before I conclude, I want to add one more important point. Some products, say watches and cars, are easy to differentiate. Others, such as gasoline and insurance services, are more challenging. But differentiation should still be the goal. And don't lose hope. Everything can be differentiated. Think bottled water. I hope this inspires you to rethink your branding strategy and be more profitable. I'm Chiranjeev Kohli, Professor of Marketing, and this has been today's leadership lesson.
Thank you, Dr. Kohli, for that insightful leadership lesson. We're back for our leadership panel. Dan and Robert, thanks for rejoining us so that we can discuss some more issues related to brand strategies.
We're excited to be here. Thank you.
So the way this works is we have 4 questions, and you'll each have a chance to answer each question. The first question, Dan, you will go first. What are the biggest branding mistakes you have seen, and what were the consequences?
I think the one that really comes to mind initially for me, there was an organization who was trying to be everything to everyone. And part of the exercise that we did was we went and we spoke with each one of their C-suite level executives. And we asked a simple question: why do you exist? What's your mission? And of the 5 C-suite level execs that we spoke with, every single one had a different answer to the same 2 questions. Same question, 2 questions. And so that immediately showed us, wow, they have no idea who they are. They don't know what their purpose is, who they're serving, and they're trying to be a generalist of everything and not focused on, one thing in particular, right? And so ultimately for them, the consequences at that time, it was really just confusion. It was brand confusion because they didn't know who they wanted to be. Their audiences didn't know what they wanted to be, who they wanted to be, why they existed. And so we really had to go through a brand process of organizing, cleaning all of that up, and being very focused with them. These are your 4 pillars. You only focus on these 4 pillars, and that's a part of your brand and the values, and we did a whole workshop with them. But that's one that comes to mind.
Okay. Robert, same question. What are the biggest branding mistakes you have seen, and what were the consequences?
Yeah, probably similar to Dan's example. Maybe not a huge mistake, but one of the challenges of running an organization that's pretty large with different locations, and you're placing a lot of trust in different leaders to deliver on the brand, no matter where you're at. I'm the type of CEO when I visit one of our sites, I pay attention to the small details, right? Are there smudges on the glass doors? Is the trash can overfilling? Is there trash on the floor on your walk-in from the parking lot? And years ago, I had an employee that didn't understand why I didn't like all the Amazon delivery boxes stacked at the front door when kids walked in. And that has a lot to do with your brand. It's how you make people feel, their first impression. so how the room looks and how the room smells and things like that. And I had to explain to them that, as a Boys and Girls Club, the very second that we interact with parents, with kids, it says something about who we are and what we allow to be kind of the environment. So not so much a mistake as much as those are those little things that kind of come up in an organization that's very complex, is making sure that your entire team is aligned to Dan's example of what you stand for, what you believe and what that standard should be, no matter what time of the day or day of the week.
So you have to know what your priorities are, and you need to be aware that it's always time.
Absolutely.
All right, our second question, and Robert will answer the second question first. Here we go. How has branding changed through the years?
This is my 20th year serving the Boys and Girls Club, and I think about how much has changed in just how we tell our story. I think the human touch will always be the human touch. So the ability to connect with people, whether it's an interaction with a parent or us, meeting with a donor, really sharing kind of the storefront of our organization, our brand. But just to think about in the last couple of years, the innovation in AI and in tools for social media, and just the expectation of kind of constantly being authentic of who you are as a brand. One thing that we've learned is we don't need to be a part of every conversation. And so when I speak with other CEOs, it's just being intentional of who you are, why you exist, what certain things you should be involved with, and what certain things you don't need to be involved with. And so just being more disciplined around, I guess there's an infinite voice now, and just being real thoughtful of where do you belong in using your brand.
Okay, great. Dan, it'll be the same question for you. How has branding changed through the years? And should a brand evolve?
Well, I definitely echo a lot of what Robert just said. Absolutely, that sentiment. A brand is not a logo. A brand is not a product. A brand is not, something that is just there at the office, wherever you are. It's emotional connection. It's establishing that type of trust. So over the years, you can go way back to the early, the 40s, the 50s, the heyday of like Mad Men and Coca-Cola and all that. And yeah, the brand like a Coca-Cola has evolved over the last 60, 70, 80 years, but they've done it all through creating an emotional connection with their audience in some capacity. Just like Boys and Girls Clubs, right? Boys and Girls Clubs as a national organization has evolved and changed over many decades. Here in Orange County, Central Orange Coast, to me, it's really like people-driven, and it's community-driven, and it's supporting all walks of people, children up to parents to grandparents, et cetera, and it's coming to them, right? It's meeting them where they are, and that through that whole process, that's how I believe, brands can change and evolve over time.
And in a way, brands have to evolve over time. They can't stay stagnant.
No, absolutely not.
No, I think in order to be relevant, you have to remind people why you're still here and why you exist, and organizations do evolve, so your brand should evolve with that.
All right, so our next question, and Dan will answer this one first, is this. What does the future of brand strategy hold, and what should we do to prepare for it?
Yeah, I think with data, analytics, AI, all of that's not going away. It's going to get more and more and more and more prevalent in our lives. And from a company, from a brand perspective, I think really utilizing those to the best of your ability to help, maybe it's hone your audiences, or maybe it's creating developing research that's going to help your goals as an organization or as a business. But it still comes back to a one-on-one type of relationship or a personal connection. That's the difference between, AI-focused brands and brands that are authentic. The brands that are authentic are going to always, in my opinion, be a step ahead.
Same question for you, Robert. What does the future of brand strategy hold, and what should we need to do to prepare for it?
I get excited about this because what we're seeing right now is kind of this complete redesign of the way that we look at each other, our relationships. At Boys and Girls Club, we use this term called future ready, making sure that every young person we serve is future ready. What that means is we're making decisions for kids that aren't born yet so that we could prepare them for the world that's waiting for them, right? What skills will these young people need over the next several decades? And that requires us to kind of think very much out of the box and forward thinking. As I think about what that relates to from a brand strategy, it's understanding that the way that we're doing things today will not be what it looks like moving forward. So we have to have adaptability if we expect our young people to be prepared for the future. Understanding that we're constantly having to learn new things, right? And being comfortable with that. Understanding that there's going to be new tools and tactics to get our story out. And that, it's been 82 years of service at our Boys and Girls Club. We're going to continue to challenge the status quo. We're going to continue to invest in innovation. Our brand should reflect that as we go through those transformations.
So your why may not necessarily change, but what it takes to deliver on your why is what has to constantly renew itself.
I think that's exact. I couldn't have said it any better. It's understanding that our fulfillment, our promise to the community is still the same, but if we're going to fulfill on that promise moving forward, our approach has to change. Our innovation has to keep up with the innovation that's happening in our world.
The needs of tomorrow need to be reflected in the programs that we deliver tomorrow. Makes sense. So we're now at a special time of the show. It's time for the final word. This is where each of you will have one last chance to share one pearl of wisdom or piece of advice. And Robert, you will go first. It's time for your final word.
I just said that we're getting kids future ready. So my advice to CEOs is get your teams future ready, right? What should you be doing in your companies that will prepare you and the people around you for the future? And whatever sector you're in, whatever industry you serve, but how do you become future ready? What's coming, right? It's a complete redesign of our day-to-day life. And so as a CEO, what are you doing to look ahead?
Good. Dan, it's time for the final word.
I said this earlier, and I'm just going to say it again because I think it's so important. Don't, as a brand, as an organization, don't make yourself the hero of your own story. You need to understand your why. You need to build trust. And the hero of your story should be your customer and whoever that end user is.
And there you have our final word. I want to thank Robert and Dan for joining us on today's show and rejoining us as well for the leadership panel.
Thank you for having us. Really
Absolutely,
appreciate it.
thanks.
If you have a question or need advice, connect with us by email, leadership@fullerton.edu, or on Instagram @CSUF_CFL. Thank you for tuning in to today's show where we talked about the importance of brand strategy and shared best practices and insights. Thanks to our featured guests, Dan Nasitka and Robert Santana, for sharing your expertise on this important topic. A special thanks to Professor Chiranjeev Kohli for delivering our leadership lesson. Join us each episode of The Leadership Voice, where leaders and experts from select industries share their insights and best practices to inform your leadership decisions. I'm Jay Barbuto, here at the Giles O'Malley Center for Leadership at Cal State Fullerton, and we'll see you next time right here on The Leadership Voice.